Previous shiurim of this week's parsha, which is Parshat Behar, are from about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, just desserts. From 3 years ago, don't give in, don't give up. From 2 years ago, forever in your hands. And a shir called Remote. And also from last year, there was a shir called Who I Am, Who We Are. Please check them out for some additional insights into the parsha. I will just try and fill in a few gaps here. Only repeating myself on 1 or 2 occasions. Otherwise, hopefully, most of the show will be new material. Okay, so just to say again what I have been saying the last few weeks, that if you have any, if you like the shurim, regular listeners to the shurim, if you want to subscribe to my daily email, which is a daily halacha, thank you, or a daily musar, which is an email you get in your inbox every day. It's an audio file you can download. It's a 2 or 3 minute idea on the parsha, or a musar, or a halacha. So there are 2 separate emails, daily musar, daily halacha. Subscribe to either one or both of them, but that is material you will almost always not hear in these shiurim, because they're too short for this shiur. They're very, very brief, powerful ideas they get from different sources. So subscribe by sending me an email, Rabbi Kelati, that's one word, RABBIKELATY @gmail.com. Without further ado, this week's Parshat Behar. And we start off with the 7th pasuk in the 25th chapter, which talks about a bit of a painful subject which everybody can relate to, and that is, okay, I'll quote it directly from the pasuk. Oh no, it's 17, not 7, 17. 17th verse. V'lo tonu ish et amito ve'areta me'elohecha ki ani Adonai Elohechem. Don't hassle your friend, your brother. Don't be a nuisance. Don't cause him pain. And we're told, which type of pain are we talking about? Physical pain? Don't hit him? Well, that's obvious. It's talking about verbal pain. Don't harass or hassle your friend with words. It's worse than Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara is bad enough as it is, but this is talking about mentally causing anguish to a person. You can't do that. This is talking about even if it's just one-on-one, and you just say something hurtful, which you think is an offhanded comment, but they might carry this comment with them for years and years and years. You're going to hear a story, Bezrat Hashem, at the end of the shiur. I have to save it to the end. I have to save something, a little carrot at the end. Keep you listening. So, last year I talked about this idea, and I do want to repeat this again, that it says in Tehillim, capital 22, verse 7, David HaMelech says, I'm a worm and not a man. Why on earth would David HaMelech say he's a worm and not a man? And there's one idea which is given by Rav Baruch of Mezhebush. He says like this: a person, when he's eating food, he's eating a salad, like he wants to eat lettuce. Anybody who's got a brain in his head will take the lettuce and check the lettuce, unless you've got lettuce from Gush Katif. You would check any leafed vegetable for bugs. Yeah? Because you know any bug that you eat contains multiple averot. Yeah? I think something like 5 lavim or 9 lavim in the Torah for every bug. I think it's 5. So that's not good. So you want to check. You wouldn't dare want to put a bug in your mouth and it will give you all those averot, God forbid. Besides the fact that you wouldn't want to do that anyway. If, apart from the Aveirot, which is bad enough, lo na'im, it's not nice to eat a bug, we're not like that. That's besides the point. But what I'm saying is a person would be very, very careful when it comes to what he puts in his mouth. But what comes out of your mouth, maybe we're not so careful. It's very easy to make a jibe or a joke, and you think it's funny, and you know what, he doesn't mind. He can take a joke. Yeah, maybe he'll give you a laugh, and he'll laugh with you. But he's not laughing inside. But it comes out of your mouth very easy. Very easy. So David HaMelech says, I'm a worm and not a man. Don't treat me like a man. Treat me like a worm. Don't treat me like a man you can talk to and say whatever you want to. Treat me like a worm. You wouldn't put a worm in your mouth. You would spit it out straight away. You would never entertain that thought of eating something like that. So therefore, be careful with me. Treat me like something be careful. Be careful what comes out of your mouth, just like something which you wouldn't want to go in your mouth. It's a very beautiful lesson that Rav Baruch tells us here about David HaMelech. And it runs deeper than that. It really does. And we all know of people who have got very severe difficulties in later life. And almost inevitably, these difficulties, whether it's abuse, a person acts in an abusive way, it could be physical abuse, it could be mental abuse, it could be any type of negative reaction, that all stems from how they were treated. So an abused child, again, I'm talking not just mental, or I'm talking physical as well. An abused child will become an abused adult, and will in turn abuse. It's not necessary. It's not a definite. Obviously, there's therapy, etc. But if it's left unchecked, it will, even though the child feels hard done by, and he feels, why did this happen to me? The irony is he will perpetrate that onto somebody else. It could be his child. It could be his spouse. It could be his sibling. But it's not the type of thing that necessarily goes away. And it's something that you have to realize. If you are causing abuse to somebody else, if you think about it, you're not just abusing them, you're abusing them and everyone who comes from them and who depends on them. So you're not just abusing one person, you're abusing a whole line of people. That's how far the sin goes. It's not a solitary Avera, it's an Avera that gets passed down. And and it goes with a lot of Averot. Happen like that, you don't do an Avera in a void, in isolation. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not an isolated incident. It's something that the person, I use this word very loosely, a person will adopt the attitude that you have. Especially children. Children soak up anything, for better or for worse. Hopefully they'll soak up good things, the good midot that you have, the good things that you show them, the loving kindness, the Torah, the mitzvot, all those things they'll soak. And the flip side is that all the things you give them, Bezrat Hashem, they will pass them down. That will become part of them, and that will go down the generation. So you're not teaching Torah to your son, you're teaching Torah all through the generations. It's very, very important. But we have to realize this pasuk is telling us about the very severe flip side of harassing verbally, and it's so quick to make a comment, and to erase it can take a lot more, a lot longer, and a lot of pain along the way. Now, to change the subject completely, because I'm not going to tell you the story now about what I was going to tell you. I'm going to leave it to the end, as I said. Let's turn to Pasuk 35, same perek. So 19. So chapter 25, verse 19 and verse 20, which talk about Shemitah. Now, we just had Shemitah last year, but Shemitah affects not just the year that it falls, it affects also the year afterwards as well, and the year before. So, let me quote from the Pasuk. ונתנה הארץ פריה ואכלתם לשובע, וישבתם לבטח עליה. וכי תאמרו, מה נאכל בשנה השביעית? הן לא נזרע ולא נאסוף את תבואתנו. So, the Pasuk tells us, by the way, excuse me if I got my voice a little bit hoarse. In fact, I didn't think I was going to be able to give the share at all, because I was croaking. I was learning today with my chavruta. I could hardly get my words out. And he directed me to a very, very good medicine, which I took, and it's helping me a little bit, but you have to excuse if I'm sounding a bit hoarse. Actually, I'm going to drink something. Thank you very much. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam shehakol niyeh b'dvaro. Keep hydrated. Okay. So, Shemitah, the pasuk I just quoted said, if you will ask, what will we eat in the 7th year? Hashem will give you enough food for the 6th year, the 7th year, and the 8th year. Because we know the 7th year is the year that the land has to lay fallow. The 6th year, you're going to get food as well, and the 7th, and even the year afterwards. 3 years worth of produce from keeping just 1 year. Now there's a question asked. The question is asked on this pasuk. It says, "V'chi tomru." If you're going to say, what are we going to eat? It sounds like a person is telling Hashem, hey, if I keep the 7th year, I don't plant any crops, what's going to happen? It's like questioning Hashem. He's doubting Hashem. And it says here, if that's the case, Hashem will give you 3 years worth of crops, will sustain you, don't worry. So it sounds like, who's going to get the bumper crop? The person who asks Hashem, what are we going to do? What? And the person who doesn't ask Hashem and says, you know what? I'm not going to ask Hashem, I trust Hashem. He's not going to get. You understand the question? Yeah? Does somebody have to have such a lack of faith in Hashem that he has to ask Hashem, what am I going to do? How can I do it? How can I go for a whole year without planting anything and I'm going to survive? What's going to happen? He will be the one who will get the 3 years of produce. And the one who doesn't ask, he doesn't get. He just keeps quiet. He's the good boy. He says, you know what? I don't need to ask Hashem. Hashem says, Hashem will look after me. I don't know how. So you have to, in other words, the one who has emunah, what happens with him? So there's a beautiful idea that comes out of this. A person who asks Hashem, let's say like this, through a lack of faith, he says, God, what am I going to do? You told me to do something. What am I going to do? He will get the miracle. But the one who didn't ask, the one who has emunah, will get an even greater miracle. That's the idea over here. Yes, Hashem wants to give us a triple bounty. He wants to give us what we want. He doesn't want us to be without. Even one who asks, and it seems like he hasn't got emunah, but the one who does have faith and he doesn't question God's motives and God's ways, he's going to get an even bigger miracle. And this is a beautiful, beautiful demonstration of how emunah in Hashem always pays off. Always. Yeah? the fact that you get something from Hashem without displaying emunah is not a proof that you were going to get it anyway, or that your lack of emunah, your lack of faith in Hashem, caused him to give you something. It shows you, through this pasuk, it shows you that your emunah always pays dividends, even greater dividends than if you question God's ways. So there's a story that goes with this, a beautiful story about the Kotzker Rebbe. The Kotzker Rebbe, we know, was very sharp, and many stories are told about how he was, his way was very, it wasn't very touchy-feely, put it that way. It wasn't like a warm, fuzzy Chassidut. It was very hard at times. But this doesn't really demonstrate that. This demonstrates his almost like his Ruach HaKodesh. So the story goes like this. One of the Hasidim of the Kotzker Rebbe once came to him crying and saying, Rebbe, I've got children to marry off. I haven't got a penny to my name. I've got nothing. How on earth am I going to marry off my children with nothing? Straight away, the Kotzker Rebbe took a piece of paper and he wrote down a letter, and this letter was addressed to one of his very rich followers. And he wrote in this letter, please, I have a fellow who's bring you this letter, who needs to marry off his children. Please help him however you can. And he put the letter in an envelope, gave it to the poor Chassid, and the Chassid was delighted. He said, wow, I've got a letter now from the Kotzker Rebbe. I can give it to this fellow, this rich fellow, and I'm going to be able to marry my kids. Amazing. So he traveled all the way to this rich fellow, and this poor fellow presented the letter from the Kotzker Rebbe. He was all happy with himself, thinking, wow, I'm going to get the money now, and my worries will be over, because I've got the letter. Now, when the rich fellow received the letter, he opened it up, read it very carefully, took out of his pocket 2 small coins and gave it to the poor fellow. He goes, here you go. Now this poor fellow didn't know where to look. He's thinking, 2 coins, that's not going to get me 1 invitation to the wedding. I'm going to marry off my children with 2 coins. It's not going to get me very far. So he doesn't say anything. He says thank you, obviously, and he walks out, and he is zerbrochen, which means broken. He pinned all his hopes on this meeting. He had the letter. It should have been an open and shut case. He should have got all the funding he needed, and he's walking away. And he's davening to Hashem, Hashem, help me. What's going to be? This was my last hope. And as he's leaving town, he hears behind him a horse and carriage. They overtake this poor fellow, and out of the carriage comes the rich guy that he'd seen just before. And he came with a big bag full of coins. And he goes, Chabid, take this and marry off your children. So now this fellow, same thing, he's just as surprised. Right? Before you give me 2 coins, now you give me so much money. What's going on? And he wanted to say, why didn't you give me that in the first place? And the fellow knew, but he probably could read his mind. He said, you're probably wondering why I only gave you 2 coins. And then I sent you packing. And now I'm coming and give you so much money. He says, you know why? He says, because when you came to see me in the first place with this letter from the holy Kotzker Rebbe, all your faith was in the letter. You said, the letter's going to save me. This is what's going to be my golden ticket. But it's not the letter that's going to save you. It's not even the Rebbe who's going to save you. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu who's going to save you. Your faith should not be in a letter. It should be in Hashem. With this letter, Hashem will have rahmanot on me. Hashem will have mercy on me. Then when you left, I could see that you were a broken person and that you were praying to Hashem. I said, now he realizes where the money is really going to come from, where the help is really going to come from. It's not from any letter. I can assure you that. It's from none other than the Borei Olam, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Such a beautiful idea, so simple, but so effective, right? You may get what you need if you show a lack of faith, but you may get even more if you have faith in Hashem. You will never, again, the message is, you will never lose if you have faith in Hashem. Never. So, it's going to be a little bit of a shorter share today. I apologize. Unfortunately, I had to go to a funeral today. Somebody I never knew, but we just went to make up the minyan. They scraped a minyan, and then they managed to say Kaddish there. But just one more point. I'm going to finish off with a story. Well, I've got two stories actually. So, same parak as we said. Now we're going to go to the 35th verse. Yeah, here we go. V'chi yamuch achicha umatay yado imach v'chezakta bo ger v'toshav v'chai imach. Nothing really revolutionary here. It says, if your brother feels impoverished, yeah, stretch out your hand to him. And v'chezakta bo, strengthen him, the ger and the toshav, which is the stranger and the resident, v'chai imach. Now, I'm saying nothing revolutionary. It talks about feeling the pain. If your brother feels poor, help him. But it also says, by the way, v'chezakta bo, strengthen him. Now, this means, when it says strengthen him, it doesn't mean just make him strong and then walk away. It means you must help him constantly. People have this mistaken attitude that once you help somebody once, you fulfilled your obligation. You've done the right thing, and now your conscience is assuaged, and you can walk away a happy man. Now, this poor fellow that you helped, a few weeks later, he's suffering something else. And you hear about it. What's your immediate reaction? I've helped him already. What do you want from me? Leave me alone. Get somebody else to help him. So many other people are sitting by and doing nothing. I helped him already. Why should I help twice? And other people help nothing. It's a normal reaction, yeah? It's not the correct reaction. Because a person, it's not just a one-off thing. I'm just thinking on top of my head. Can you imagine if somebody came to you and he was poor and he said, look, I'm so hungry, I haven't eaten for days. And you give him a meal. Even better, you don't even give him money for a meal, you give him an actual meal, that's even better. And then he comes to you the next day and he says, I need to eat. Again, I'm so hungry. I haven't eaten since the last time you gave me, 24 hours ago. Imagine if you turn around and say, I fed you already. Twice you want me to feed you? How many times do you want to eat? Of course, you helped him once, that's good. It doesn't mean that's it and finished. It's, in other words, I'm not saying you have to put yourself out and help somebody. Not many people are on that level that they can literally adopt. There are tzaddikim who do that, by the way, that they will bring somebody into their house and they won't let them go. They literally feed them, clothe them. These people are tzaddikim, they need to be praised for that. But not everybody is on that level, I hear that. But it's also not like you can't treat them like a one-hit wonder. Then that's it, have what you need and goodbye. People need help on a constant basis. That's why the pasuk says, v'chezakta bo, strengthen him. We know if somebody comes to you for tzedakah, and then again he comes to you, don't say I've given you already. And this is definitely the case on Purim. Somebody comes to you twice, you need to give him twice. He comes to you a third time, give him a third time. If you've got money, you have to give him. You don't ask questions on Purim. We know that. It's not a case, I need to see your credentials, show me your Van Hatzlaka, show me this, show me that. Don't worry about that. And another reason, another point I want to bring out, and that is that very often our Yetzer Hara tells us, don't give him any money. He's going to waste it. He's not going to use it sensibly. He's going to do this with it. Suddenly you make all these cheshbonot and you don't end up giving him anything. Now that's also not correct, because first of all, it's the act of tzedakah. You have to give tzedakah. Now I'm not saying if you know somebody for sure is a thief, and you have a good, of course that's something else. Then this person is stealing. But to make a cheshbon and say, oh, how do I know what he's going to spend it on? He's going to spend it on this or that. But you don't know, just because he doesn't look very frum, and you start having these misgivings. No, you shouldn't do that. At least give him something. And of course, side by side, if there's a case of an almanah, like a widow, or an orphan, and on the other side you have somebody who may not be such a needy case, you have to apportion your money in the correct proportion. But at the same time, to say, no, I won't give because he's not going to use the money appropriately, it's not really a cheshbon that you need to make as often as you think. Yeah, obviously, of course, somebody is a trickster, then you have to, you have to raise some very serious doubts, and you have to go and ask and inquire, etc. Anyway, you get the idea. Now, the Ben Ish Chai brings a story about a king. And the king had a son who he wanted to give the best education to. Of course, we want our children to get the best. So the king hired a top, all-round educator, an all-in-one, one-stop shop, we buy any car type of guy. This teacher could teach anything to anyone. So the king says, you're the man for me. You be my son's tutor. You teach him everything you know. I want him to be the top student. Fine. Of course, it took years and years. And the prince was a very good student. And the teacher was a very good teacher. And this carried on for many, many years. And the prince was learning so much. And he became a top grade A student in every way, shape or form. Once the prince had come of age, it came that the prince didn't need the teacher anymore. So the king, he'd be paying wages to the tutor, every month. But at the end of the child's tuition, after he'd come of age, the king gave him a massive payoff. Hundreds of thousands of coins as a gesture because you've been teaching my son for so many years. And he sent him off, and the tutor's very happy. But a couple of days later, the tutor came back to the palace and asked the king something. So the king said, what can I do for you? So the tutor said, I know that I've finished teaching your son, and he's done very well, and you've paid me very appropriately, I'm very happy. But I have one more lesson I would like to teach your son. And I feel it would be remiss of me not to teach him this lesson. So it won't take longer than about an hour. Could you send your son to my house? And I will just give him this one last lesson. And then that will be it. So the king was so impressed. He said, look, I've even paid the fellow. He's teaching me out of his own heart. He says, of course, I'll send my son. So he sends his son to the teacher's house. Knock on the door, the son comes in. The teacher says, come down, sit down, dear prince. I'm so glad you came. I have one last lesson to teach you. if you just sit down, I just need to go into one of the back room. I'll be back in 1 second. So the prince is sitting down. He's thinking, wow, I'm going to get one free lesson. Amazing. The tutor comes back seconds later. He's holding in his hand a club, a rubber truncheon. And he proceeds to take this club and beat the living daylights out of this prince. Whack, tach, smack. This kid doesn't know what's hit him, literally. He's getting blow after blow. Whack. He's bleeding. He's bruised. In the end, he's lying on the floor, almost unconscious. And the tutor gets up and says, okay, thank you very much. And he lifts up the guy, throws him out of the house, and that's it. What on earth just went on? This kid is thinking, I don't believe it. I've never had so much as a bad word with my tutor. And he comes, he beats me to a pulp. What's going on? So he runs back with his tail between his legs, straight to his father, the king. And he tells the king, and the king, he didn't need to be told twice. He sees his son covered with blood, bruised, cuts, everything. He says, who on earth did this to you? He says, Father, you're not going to believe it. It was the tutor. He says, what? So immediately he sends his guards. He slapped the tutor to the palace. And he says, you know, you caused my son such pain. How on earth could you do this? I'm going to have to give you the death sentence. You nearly killed him. So why did you do this? What on earth could he have done to warrant such a terrible punishment from you? So the tutor said, Your Majesty, I know you're probably wondering, this is totally out of character for me. He said, but there is a very simple explanation. He says, I tutored your son for 18 years. And I taught him everything I knew. Now he's in line to be the next monarch after you. When he sits on the throne, there will be cases that will come to him. People who have been cheated, people who are poor, people who have been attacked, all sorts of different cases of people who are in pain, people who are suffering. And he'll be sitting on his throne. How on earth would he judge a case of somebody who's in pain when he's sitting on his throne and everything is fine and hunky-dory? He's never felt any pain in his life. He will never be able to relate to anybody who's had any type of bad feeling or physical pain before. So I wanted to give him a little lesson to show, you know what? You're going to remember this punishment. You're going to remember this pain. So when somebody comes in front of you and they've been physically abused, they've been hurt, or they're suffering in any way, you will remember. You remember the pain that you received. Of course, it was with a rubber truncheon. It wasn't, he wasn't like he didn't have any bones broken. But your son will remember this pain, and now he will feel empathy with whoever is in front of him. Now, of course, this is a mashal. It's not true. It's given by the Ben Ish Chai. And it's a little bit, maybe you could say it's not politically correct. But it's, A, it's only a story. B, it's meant to bring out a point. It's not meant to be politically correct. It's meant to bring out a point that we have to feel the pain of our fellow man. We can't just judge them. We can't just reciprocate for their pain and give them whatever they need when we don't know what they need. Now, if you think about it, imagine a man is standing in front of you and he is starving and he wants something to eat. How would you know how hungry he is? How would you know what it feels like to not know when your next meal is coming from? So what did Hashem do for us? He gave us something for every single Jew. every single Jew, at least over the age of 13, to be able to relate to this person who's standing in front of you without any food. What is that? That's a Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, we all have to fast, with few exceptions. Obviously, if you're not bar mitzvah, and then women nursing, or whatever, there are exceptions. But at least once a year, I mean, of course there are other fasts, but I'm talking about the main fast. At least once a year, we know what it's like for somebody not to have any food. So when we get to that fast day, we need to remember what it's like when you're standing up in shul all day, no food, no drink, and we're desperate just even to sit down. And the Ilah, you know, I don't have to remind you how difficult it is to stand up. And you're desperate, your legs are giving way, and you want to sit down. And some old people do sit down because it's just too difficult for them. So you should feel that pain. And there are people who go through this agony day after day after day. They literally do not know where their next meal is coming from. They're living hand to mouth. So now every Jew will have no excuse. When we see a man who doesn't have, we can say, yes, I remember that day on the 10th of Tishri when I also didn't have. And you know what? Even that isn't enough, because we knew that when we get to the end of the Ne'ilah and we say Arvit, that we can go home and then that pain is over. We just eat. But the poor person, it's even worse. Imagine you're finishing Yom Kippur and you don't even know how you're going to break the fast. So it's just to give us a good idea of what it's like for that poor person. So that is one beautiful idea of how Yom Kippur, and indeed all the other fasts, can show us that we need to feel the empathy of the poor man that's standing before us. So now I'm going to finish off with one story, a beautiful story which I just saw minutes before I gave the share, and I apologize to everyone here because I had to read it first, and I kept them all waiting. So, Mechila. So the story goes like this. There was a young couple who were going to get married. And the uncle of the Khatan came from abroad for his nephew's Khatuna. Yeah, happens very often. People come, they go travel hundreds, thousands of miles, normally thousands of miles, and they come, they take part in a Khatuna. It's beautiful, it's wonderful, it's so praiseworthy that people come nowadays. They spend a lot of money and they give it their time, and they come and they just come for a wedding. It's beautiful. Baruch Hashem. We should feel blessed that we have family like that. So when this uncle came in, he came to the house of the bride. Now obviously the bride is not his family, but he was there because he was there for the Kabbalat Panim, the Tish. And while he was there, he saw the father of the Kala. Yeah, so again, the uncle of the groom saw the father of the bride. And they recognized each other because they were in yeshiva together. And they were talking and schmoozing about the old times in yeshiva. And you know, when you get into a conversation like that, all the memories start flooding back. It's beautiful, beautiful. When you relive all these old memories, especially in yeshiva. You know, when you're in yeshiva, the nostalgia is palpable. So they were talking and schmoozing. And the uncle of the groom said to the father of the bride, he said, "Do you remember, we had such fun in yeshiva. Do you remember that time that you were in your room, and you know there was a prank that a few of the kids wanted to play on you. You know, they locked you into your room and they didn't give you the key. And you were in there for who knows how long, and you're banging on the door, and people were outside laughing. You remember that? So now, the father, the father of the bride said, yes, I do remember that. And you know what? It's not so much that I remember that. It's so much that I never forgot that, because it really hurt me and it really upset me. And I said at the time, I would never forgive the person who was responsible for locking me in that room that time when I was a young man in yeshiva. And now this uncle heard this comment and he started turning white, because he was one of the boys who had locked this fellow in his room. And now he didn't know where to put himself. He didn't know what to say. How could he ever get out of this? Because, the fellow rightly said he's not going to forgive. Of course, you should try and forgive, but that was his reaction. He said it at the time. So now what's the uncle going to do? So the next morning, this uncle went to a Rav, and he asked the Rav, what can I do? How can I tell him? How can I be mefayes him? How can I, what's the word, mefayes? To appease him, thank you. How can I appease him? So the Rav listened very patiently to the fellow, and he said, look, I will go on your behalf and I will speak to the father of the bride, and I will see if I can, make some sort of reconciliation. So now the Rav went to the house, spoke to the father, and he pulled the whole thing on the table. He said, to hold such pain in, even though you felt such pain, this fellow wants to ask forgiveness. It was 30 years ago that he did this. He was a kid, just like you were a kid. Forgive him. Put an end to this suffering. Everyone wants a happy ending out of this. Let's forgive and forget. Of course, the uncle didn't come very, matter-of-factly. He really did feel bad that he'd taken part in this thing. So then the father started thinking about what the rabbi had said, took it all into account, and he said, you know what, I accept the apology, and I'm going to put this behind me. And that was the end of the story. However, apparently, a year after this whole incident, the uncle came back to the father of the bride, and he said to him, I've got to tell you something. I've got to tell you something that's amazing news. He said, my wife and myself, we've been married 26 years, and we never had any children. And my wife just gave birth to our first child after 26 years of childlessness, because this thing had come to a head, and it had been, the forgiveness had been given. The fellow who perpetrated this act had been blessed with a child. You think about it, first of all, it's a beautiful ending to the story. But if you look at it, I'm not suggesting for a moment that this is definitely the case, that the fellow who was married, been married for 26 years, never had any children because of this. But you can see a small incident that you would have forgotten about it. And it only came up in conversation because you were reminiscing. You could blink and forget it. It was just like we had a little bit of fun as a kid. It was 30 years ago. Who would think of such a thing? But you see, possibly could have contributed to this fellow not having any children for 26 years. But more than that, the father of the bride, who had been locked in that room, had kept his pain and had never gotten over it. He might have forgotten it, might have put it in the back of his mind, but at the time he said he'll never forgive whoever did it. He must have been literally terrified. But the people who did it, they just happened 1 minute and forgotten the next. 30 years later, it was still in the fellow's mind. Yeah, that's something to bear in mind next time we play a prank on somebody, or we see our kids playing pranks, that these things don't go away. There are stories told about people who, again, in very similar circumstances, have had something done to them, relatively minor, and that pain has been with them and they've been traumatized by it. So, on one hand, we're not miracle workers that we can predict every single thing that somebody's going to be sensitive with. People might be sensitive and we don't even know about it. We might do something inadvertently and they don't tell us about it and we don't know about it, and then the pain is there and we can't even do teshuvah because we don't even know what we've done. For that, off the top of my head, I would say Hashem is shomer peta'im. Hashem looks after the simple ones. If we show Hashem that we care and we do not want to harm any person, then Hashem will protect us from harming somebody even inadvertently. But definitely, we must not cause any pain. The pasuk says, "Lo tonu," don't cause anybody any verbal pain. Don't cause anybody any physical pain. And because we don't know the ramifications. And if we show that, then even the shogagim, the inadvertent pain that we cause somebody, Hashem will see to that is forgotten. Then Yiratzon, all of us should take these valuable lessons we give in this week's parasha. Not to cause anybody pain, verbally or physically. Look after your brother. It's not a one-off matter. You just give him tzedakah once and that's it, you're yotzeh. Give him, ve'chazakta, be machazekim, on a regular basis. And also, it says if your brother, it doesn't say if a man feels impoverished. It says if your brother, make him like your brother. You wouldn't leave your brother in the street. You wouldn't leave your brother without any money. You wouldn't leave your brother to make a wedding with two coins. You give your brother whatever you have. So make your fellow Jew like your brother. Look after him like he's your own flesh and blood. And Yiratzon, all of us should merit the greatest Besorot Tovot that we can ever have, which we've been waiting for and crying and screaming for so many years. It's literally on our doorstep. It's going to happen any moment now, Bezrat Hashem. And we will all dance with Mashiach and Eliyahu Navi in the Beit Chadash, Israel. It should happen speedily, with no further pain.